The Mariners are coming off of a crushing defeat at the hands of the San Diego Padres. Mariners fans have to walk around in shame as their natural rivals hoist the Vetter Cup. I can't get away from San Diego Padres fans. They're rampant in Seattle, our natural rivals. They just won't stop bragging about the Vetter Cup. Um, the, if I don't know if everybody knows this, and I could have some of this history wrong. Several years ago, when interleague play started, they started. If you ever wondered why, I don't know if people explain this to people very often. If you ever wonder why we have the Vetter Cup, interleague play, they tried to make a natural rivals matchup for every team. Many teams have very obvious natural rivals, right? Like the Yankees and the Mets, very obvious. The Cubs and the White Sox, very obvious. So the what would it be like the Giants and the A's, very obvious. But if you're a Mariners fan, first off, there's not really any team that has like I think, an obvious rivalry with the Mariners, even in recent years. Maybe the Houston Astros, but I would say like Houston's rivals were probably old NL teams that they played against at the time. I think that when interleague play started, Houston was still in the National League, and they just wouldn't be the. Now I think they might be, but the natural rival, they just didn't have one at the time. So they get the San Diego Padres, and then they make this kind of contrive this Vetter Cup because Eddie Vedder has ties to both San Diego and Seattle. Very funny, of course, that his favorite team is the Chicago Cubs, and he's not really split loyalty between the Padres and the Mariners. But this represents. I don't think anyone actually cares about the Vetter Cup that much, but it does. It was a frustrating weekend. It's a weekend that sees the Mariners fall even further below 500. Fans had some optimism that this would be a year where the Mariners started off a little hotter, where they didn't have to scrape into a playoff spot to get there. Maybe you get a chance to rest, to be rested instead of scraping and clawing at the end of the season. And it just hasn't worked out that way for a lot of reasons. A lot of stuff has gone wrong. We're going to talk about it. Also, Colt Emerson got called up yesterday, which was very exciting. But the question is, some people are wondering, will that be enough to save the Mariners season? I will ask a question that I will attempt to answer after. Does the Mariners season need to be saved? That's a question. And then, we're going to talk about a whole bunch of other stuff after that, after the music. So this is the Poor Sports Seattle podcast. I am comedian and host Casey McLean. This podcast is presented by Tacoma Comedy Club, which is Tacoma's home for stand-up comedy. Also, by the way, it is a lot of places home for stand-up comedy. It is, up until Emerald City Comedy Club opened up, was the only A club west of the Cascades in Washington State. The other A club in the state at the time was Can Comedy Club, owned by the same people. Go check out comedy in this area, and there's a good chance if you're going to see a famous comedian or a very good comedian that you are going to a place that is owned or partially owned by the people who own Tacoma Comedy Club. But this podcast in particular is brought to you by Tacoma Comedy Club, Tacoma's home for stand-up comedy. And you can see me at Tacoma Comedy Club July 3rd. And if you follow me on social media, and if you interact with me on there, if you send me a DM, I might be able to get you in for free, but you have to do that. You have to send me a DM or mention me. You have to be following me, and I will try to get you in for free. Casey McLean Comedy on all social media except for Twitter, where I am the Casey McLean. Okay. Let's talk about these Mariners, because Colt Emerson got called up to play third base. He gets called up. There's one part of this I heard some conversation with Justin Hollander, the Mariners GM, right hand man to Jerry Dipoto, and a little bit I think with Colt Emerson, and it does kind of suck that you're a top prospect. You've been with this organization for a couple of years now. You got this big extension. They're clearly trying to like deliberately bring you up. And he didn't get enough notice to get his family out to watch his major league debut. I could see that being a little bit frustrating. Had Colt Emerson not already signed a massive 8-year extension, I'd be like, is this something that comes up in future negotiations? Are there hard feelings about this? But obviously, if there are hard feelings about this, Colt Emerson can't really exercise anything on those hard feelings for 8 full years. I will say he came up. I watched his first plate appearance, and then I went and hit some golf balls with my daughter, and I have not gotten a chance to watch the other plate appearances. It was a confusing stat line to walk back into, a confusing box score where the Mariners had 3 runs, 1 hit, and the 1 hit had nothing to do with those 3 runs. Very confusing stat line, but Colt Emerson ends up getting on base once. He's 0 for 2, right? That's I gotta have this. Yeah, he was. Oh, sorry, 0 for 3. No, 0 for 2. 0 for 2 with a walk. That's the Jesus Christ. 3 plate appearances. He's batting 9th, and I mean that's where he I don't think he'll end up being a 9 hitter in his career, but you're bringing a guy up, especially on short notice, and short notice meaning like. It's like 1 o'clock when they announced it, and I think it was 1 o'clock, or it was like after 1 o'clock when they announced it. I believe it was after 1 o'clock on the clock in the video that the Rainiers posted or the Mariners posted of Colt Emerson finding out that he's coming up to Seattle. They pointed that out, by the way, on the broadcast. Ryan Roland Smith pointed out the clock in the background. I'm going to tell you, I have some concerns about this idea, like just bring up Colt Emerson. You got to bring up Colt Emerson. The team needs a spark. You got to bring up Colt Emerson. I do think that Colt Emerson will make this team better, but I don't think that it was a no-brainer to bring him up, especially before we saw J.P. Crawford get hit by a pitch and have to leave the game. But, he's been scuffling a little bit at AAA. Not terrible, but so far this year he's batted .255, 347 on base, 469 slugging, 10% walk rate, which you like, but 27.2% strikeout rate. And I would expect that number to tick up a little bit in the major leagues. I would expect the walk rate to go down a little bit, especially until he starts to show some power. And I mean, 1 plate appearance isn't enough and especially first plate appearance of his career, is certainly not enough to blink scout Colt Emerson and have strong feelings about him. But he was pretty antsy to swing at the ball in that first plate appearance. I'm sure he had a million nerves going through him. I would just say, like, there's this guy named Chris Mitchell. I'm kind of friendly with Chris Mitchell on social media, and then he did a podcast of mine a while back. I think he ended up working for the Twins, and then he was actually doing, weirdly, I believe, like analytics for the NASCAR Truck Series, which I don't know who's consuming and using those analytics, but he had this prospect system called Cato that looked at kind of like what are the sticky elements of a prospect stat line? Like, what's the stuff that translates into success at a higher level? And one of them is strikeout rate. One of them is walk rate. Walk rate is less sticky than strikeout rate. Like, you'd like to see a low strikeout rate. For most guys, that's probably going to tick up in the majors just a little bit because the pitchers are a little bit better. Walk rate can stick a little bit, but it requires power to back it up. There's been some guys, like I want to say Tyson Gillies, for example, and he wasn't in AAA. He was in High A Modesto, I believe. Was it Modesto or was it no, it was High Desert. When the Mariners had just like an insane home ballpark at High A, they had these super inflated stat lines, and guys would walk because there was a threat of power from guys who didn't traditionally hit for a lot of power. And the walk rate isn't as sticky for that kind of thing. So if Colt Emerson is a 27% strikeout rate guy at AAA right now and a 10% walk rate. You could probably assume he's going to be like a 30% or higher strikeout rate in the majors. In his first year, he can improve. He can continue to develop. He's only 20 years old. And probably reduced walk rate a little bit. 8% walk rate. And when you start to talk about a guy who's 8% walk rate and 30% strikeout rate, he's going to start to have some power. He's got to have some power. He's got to have some defensive value. He's not necessarily propping his value up on contact. And then, I mean, Emerson has been, there's been a lot of conversation about what position Colt Emerson ultimately plays. He, this year, he has played primarily shortstop and a little bit of third base in the minors. I think that the plan is for Colt Emerson to be the long-term shortstop. Obviously, J.P. Crawford has a year left on his contract, and the team has been seemingly very reluctant to move him off that position. I think this team might be better off, like significantly better off, if you just swapped Cole Young to shortstop and J.P. Crawford to second base. Like just that. I don't think they're going to do it because the Mariners operate on this above reproach, honorable scale. I think I heard the other day. I'll have to go look at this and confirm it, but that they don't do the qualifying offer, that's like not part of their calculus. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's been true under Jerry Dipoto or if it's just that they haven't had a player who deserved the qualifying offer get to free agency. But the Mariners put themselves under some undue regulation. One of those things seems to be they love J.P. Crawford and they're loyal to J.P. Crawford. And I've professed I have a lot of affection for J.P. Crawford. I like him a lot. I liked him as a prospect. I'm a long time early adopter J.P. Crawford head. I liked J.P. Crawford. I was stoked when the Mariners traded for him. I'm a fan. But it's over. I've said it multiple times. I predicted it in the offseason. I predicted a couple things. J.P. Crawford, bad defender. Brendan Donovan, bad defender. Both those things, very true. I don't even need to predict that Randy Arozarena is going to be a bad defender. I didn't realize until I talked about it in the offseason how bad JP had gotten. He's one of the absolute worst. He is in the bottom three of shortstops. Bottom is CJ Abrams, just a category of his own, terrible. And then JP Crawford is in like the next tier firmly and at the bottom of that tier, if there is a tier there, if he's not also in a category of his own. Very bad shortstop. So just by virtue of Colt Emerson replacing one of those guys, he's contributing something, even if his bat doesn't become incredible. And that's like the Mariners don't have a ton of hope on the left side of the field. I think that's just a reality that I have to face because I'd like to see the Mariners improve their left side defense, the third base, shortstop, and left field positions. I'd like to see all those positions improve, but I don't have a good answer for how to do it. We're going to talk about that later because they don't have reinforcements coming. Felnin Celestine, he's in high A ball. He's supposedly an above average fielding shortstop, but he's in high A ball. That's a big jump. I would not expect to see Celestine this year, and if you do, it's probably like a September call-up, and probably even then, only for injury out of necessity. Just too young, too inexperienced at higher levels. And there's just not, the Mariners fans of a certain age will remember guys like Jack Wilson, Brendan Ryan. Oh, I feel like there's somebody else that I'm missing that's like, these guys were just like tremendous defenders at shortstop. And we also saw enough of Yuniesky Betancourt, Jose Lopez, who came up as a shortstop, but played primarily second and third base. we saw these guys. We also saw guys stick at shortstop that shouldn't have been shortstops, but there were these defensive specialists available at shortstop, and I've looked it up. There's just not really great options in that regard, and a lot of those guys are playing multiple positions now. In the offseason, I advocated for signing Willie Castro, which not only did it come with positional versatility where he was an average or better than average defender, he was right-handed on a team that's very left-handed, which is why I thought he was a better option than Brendan Donovan, but he was also a free agent, which meant the Mariners didn't have to give up prospects. They could use those prospects at a time like right now to potentially go fill one of those needs that the Mariners have. And they have needs. The Mariners have needs across the board. They could absolutely use pitching. They could absolutely use offense and defense, but they have less opportunities to acquire those guys. Willie Castro might never have wanted to come to Seattle, by the way, and has not been a world beater in Colorado, but philosophically, better than Rob Refsnyder for, I think, less money, by the way. Which brings me to the next point. Rob Refsnyder has been the face of a problem. Some of that is just the pinch hitting, but he's struggled when he's pinch hit. He's struggled when he's been, on the small side of a platoon against left-handed starters. And the Mariners have had to sit Luke Raley and either DH Refsnyder or play him in the field. And neither of those has worked out well. He's been very bad at the plate and has a history as a bad defender. And it's gotten to a point where it's like, we're talking like a 130 batting average, like a 400 something OPS. Just a rough start for a guy who also is not going to get a ton of plate appearances regardless. So it's not like you can expect him to get 60 plate appearances in 10 days and turn it around. It's a guy that probably can only really turn it around in the practice facility. And he provides no defensive value. He's a platoon at a position that provides no defensive value. And the Mariners have a lot of guys who really should be DHs. Led by, in my opinion, J.P. Crawford. He is simply terrible. He is unplayable. The Mariners will continue to play him, but he is unplayable at shortstop. Bat's still good. Glove, bad. Even when you see him make these sliding plays, try to watch the replay for where his feet are. When that play starts, when that ball is hit. Brendan Donovan is like a bad defender at a bunch of positions. There is value in being able to competent, if not at a league average level, play a defensive position, several defensive positions, but he's a guy that's like a glorified DH. Randy Arozarena is a DH. Luke Raley has been terrible defensively this year. And by the way, the fact that he's sniffing center field is an absolute embarrassment, a failure in roster construction. So he's a DH. Dominic Canzone is a DH. You should probably be DHing Cal Raleigh 50 times this year, especially when he comes back. I would like to see him play half or just barely above half his games at catcher. He got worked hard last year. There's also, by the way, there's not great options at backup catcher. Because you're kind of asking somebody, Mitch Garver, probably, to be like a half-time starter, which is different from being a backup. Garver's not great for that role. There's not a lot of great backup catchers. There's not a lot of great catchers out there. Catchers struggle, and they struggle to stay healthy. They struggle to be productive in their 30s, and a way that you can preserve Cal Raleigh's bat is to not make him play as much catcher. It's a little better now with they're doing the one knee stances, and we'll see what that does to catcher longevity. But for now, there's no doubt it's a concern. Cal got an oblique injury, played through it, and it got bad enough he had to go on the IL. But that's an injury that lingers. I'm worried about Cal. And I'm also worried that, like, you can't just, there's no, the Mariners have too many DHs. It's on the side of the screen, but I mean, they have Rayleigh, Canzone, Arozarena, Crawford. That's 4. Refsnyder's 5. For as long as he sticks around. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough, and the problem with it is you got all these DHs playing positions badly. I've said it. I talked about it a couple weeks ago. The Mariners are 27th in defense according to Fangraphs defensive run value, and the worst of those guys, by the way, is Luke Rayleigh. Luke Rayleigh's been worth negative 4.2 runs, and that is in limited duty. The second worst defender on the team statistically, or at least the second least valuable so far this season, on a raw basis, not on a rate basis, is Julio Rodriguez. And I guess that's a question. Are we concerned about Julio Rodriguez defense yet? I would say no for a couple reasons. One, defensive stats take a while to stabilize. That's why I tend to talk about both team defense and individual player defense. There's some of these guys, we have enough signal to know that, like, Brendan Donovan's a bad defender. J.P. Crawford is a bad defender. Randy Arozarena is a bad defender. They have multiple years of data to suggest they are bad defenders. Cole Young, scouting reports in the minors weren't that he was bad. He wasn't Gold Glove quality, but they were not that he was bad. Stats last year were bad. So far, he's looked pretty good. He's like one of the few bright spots, one of the few unexpected wins that the Mariners have. Otherwise, it's been a tough season. So too many DHs. The Mariners have a problem in their rotation. So Luis Castillo, I'm going to actually say this. I was not a fan of the Dan Wilson hire. I have some problems with his in-game management. I've got some problems with the personnel decisions that the Mariners have made in the last couple of years. I think they've tried to get too cute. I don't necessarily think they should have gone and spent $30 million a year on somebody, or $40, $50, $60 million a year on a free agent. But I think they've tried to, I think they keep buying boxes of Band-Aids, and they're bleeding more than a Band-Aid can handle. I don't know. The analogy's falling apart. I'd love it if they went and spend more money. Hold on. My daughter's home sick, and there's a pretty strong chance that she is scream crying right now. So let's see if we can't. We're going to either wrap this up quickly or... Hold on. We're going to pause this. All right, we're back. I have a lot of problems with what the Mariners have done in recent off seasons. I haven't been shy about that. I haven't been the only person criticizing them. I think my critiques might be unique to me. I think that I probably have a slightly different view from the most mainstream view of how the Mariners should have handled their off seasons, but I haven't loved it. I haven't loved all the on-field decisions. I think they're handling this Luis Castillo, Bryce Miller thing perfectly, frankly. And I don't think that they should give up on Luis Castillo, and I also don't think that Luis Castillo is worse. Here's my stance on Luis Castillo. I said this on Dan Vienn's Mariners Forever podcast also. I don't think Luis Castillo is that much worse than he was last year. I would argue he's probably not worse at all than he was last year. I think he got much worse 3 years ago, and sequencing luck and home ballpark and not having as bad of a defense propped him up. I think he's had tremendously bad sequencing luck. You could see it in his last start, by the way. He gets to 5 2/3 innings with 1 run scored, ends up giving up kind of a fluky, untimely home run. Bad luck timing. Bad luck that there were guys on base. Bad luck that he didn't that he didn't do it earlier with nobody on base, that he didn't sneak another out before he turned that and he also goes like 100, he was like 107, 110 pitches, something like that. Like he was deep into a ball game. It was unfortunate luck for him. It looks just as bad on his box score, but he went 5 2/3 innings with, I think, only gave up 1 run. If they pull him at 5 2/3, you're like, what a bounce back start for Luis Castillo. He throws 1 pitch. And also some pitches that obviously led to guys being on base, but just bad luck. Velocity's good. Movement's good. I do have some concerns about pitch use and how it interacts with defense, which is also, by the way, why I'm not as concerned with Julio Rodriguez, because one, like I said, defensive stats, individual defensive stats take a long time to stabilize, and they're also kind of interactive with other positions. So one thing is, it's possible that Julio Rodriguez, knowing that he has bad defenders on both sides of him this year, especially with Victor Robles being hurt, knowing that he has bad defenders, they might be positioning Julio Rodriguez in a different spot to minimize how bad Randy Arozarena performs or how bad Luke Raley performs. I think the same could be true for the defense. I think that might be, maybe Brendan Donovan isn't as bad as we think he is. Maybe Cole Young isn't as good as we think he is. Maybe the positioning has something to do with it. But Luis Castillo, bad at ball luck, throwing his slider a lot more. Jose Ferrer has gone from one of the league's leading ground ball pitchers to not having an elite ground ball rate. And also not missing a ton of bats. I'm a little worried about if Jose Ferrer and Luis Castillo have switched up their pitch mix because they don't trust the infield defense. I think Luis Castillo is at like a career low ground ball rate, but he's throwing I think it's his slider. He's throwing his slider way more. Look at what Jose Ferrer's pitch mix looks like. Because I suspect that it's, without looking, this is truly without looking, I suspect that he is throwing his sinker less, would be my guess. But I could be wrong. Doing this in real time, not super exciting stuff. Come on, baby. Come on. Why is this not giving me what I want? Here we go. Pitch type. Yeah, he's throwing a sinker a little bit less. 64.7% versus 70.4%. And Jose Ferrer is also throwing his slider more. Some of this might be symptomatic of a team that does not trust its infield defense. So, first off, if the Dodgers showed us anything, it's that teams need more than 5 starters to make it through the playoffs and to make it through the season and to make it through the World Series. And if the Mariners use Luis Castillo in the bullpen in the postseason, I'm totally okay with that. He did it last year. He was effective at it. I don't think you want to burn his arm. If you believe any part of the idea that if you turn him into a reliever, it's too hard to stretch him out again to be a starter, I think you got to do everything you can, explore every avenue to keep his pitch count up. Because there's no doubt in my mind that at some point one of these guys is going to need an extended break because of an injury or a dead arm or ineffectiveness, and you're going to need Luis Castillo to be a starter at some point later in this year, and I don't think he's that bad. There's nothing in his profile that has shifted so badly. Now, it did 3 years ago. He became a worse pitcher 3 years ago. He lost velocity, his ground ball rate went down, his strikeout rate went down a little bit. That's true. It didn't show up in his ERA stats, in his traditional stats, until this year. But the peripheral stats, the things that I think predict the future, I don't think, that the evidence shows predict the future better, he's not that much worse. A little bit. Half a notch, half a tick. Not that much worse. I'm not giving up on Luis Castillo now. Part of the reason is because I did give up on him 3 years ago. Like, I saw that happen 3 years ago and was worried about it then. My worries haven't changed. He's actually remarkably maintained velocity to that point. Usually guys start on that trajectory, they don't stop. Luis Castillo has maintained velocity. I am interested to see. I'm not completely against if they turn him into a leverage reliever. I think that's like the second best option as a guy that throws hard, has good breaking stuff, doesn't have to worry about pitching 6-7 innings, going out there and just throwing as hard as he can and the nastiest breaking shit that he can possibly break off. I think there's a chance Luis Castillo's stuff plays up in that circumstance. And I'd be interested to see what that looks like also, if they have to take him out of the rotation. But ultimately, I think keep his arm stretched out for as long as you can. The Mariners don't have a starting rotation problem. They have a luxury, which is a surplus of viable arms. And then lastly, I mean, what can the Mariners do? It's tough because you got these two guys, Randy Arozarena and JP Crawford. They're both in the last years of their contract. They're both, I think, beloved in the clubhouse. The fan base loves them in general. I think that the tides are turning a little bit on JP Crawford, and I think people have historically been frustrated with Randy Arozarena's defense, but they're in a tough spot. What message does it send to the clubhouse? What all this amateur psychology bullshit? Like, I don't know how to quantify that. I don't really care about that stuff, but the Mariners very obviously do, and I think they would have a tough time justifying trading JP Crawford and Randy Arozarena and also saying they're trying to win this year. The only option really is an old school player for player trade, need for need trade. The Mariners have a surplus of middle infielders. Brendan Donovan, the only place he's a plus defender is, or an even average defender, is second base. Colt Emerson has way more experience as a shortstop than at third base. Cole Young is a second baseman that has also played shortstop, but like, they got a bunch of second basemen, they got a bunch of DHs, they got not that much in between the two left side of the infield positions, left field and second base. So if you could go trade JP Crawford to a team that maybe wants to use him as a second baseman, where I think that he's probably better suited, he has a weak arm, no range, or as a first baseman, frankly, like if Josh Naylor goes down, I don't care how weird it looks. I'm handing JP Crawford a first base glove and seeing what he can do over there. JP's still a very good hitter. Still valuable as a player, by the way. The defense is atrocious. His bat's good enough that it makes him a valuable player, which is insane, considering how bad his glove is. JP's been worth almost a win above replacement. He's got a 123 WRC plus, despite being worth almost -3 runs as a defender. He's been horrible as a defender. Still positive value because the bat's very good. JP's a little bit tall. JP's probably got what? Does JP have 3 inches on Josh Naylor? If we were to actually stand them next to each other, what's JP listed at? Listed at 6 foot. Okay, I'd be curious if what is Josh Naylor listed at? He's got to be listed at 5. Oh, he's actually listed at 5'10". I think that's an option if Josh Naylor ever goes down. I would like to see the Mariners actually probably explore that. I think that's, even if you're just giving Naylor a day off, like, I don't need to see Luke Raley there anymore. I'd love to see Cal get some time at first base, but I'd like to see JP Crawford get some time at first base. That might be his future, frankly. And maybe that's what JP looks like going forward, is if he could bulk up a little bit, hit for a little bit of power, become a very good defensive first baseman, because he does have a decent glove. Range is the problem, not the glove. And keep walking and hitting for a relatively high average. Maybe that's what the future of JP Crawford looks like. Probably not in Seattle, but somewhere. But if you can find a team, that's offensively challenged, Send them Randy Arozarena and let Brendan Donovan become your day-to-day left fielder. Send him Randy Arozarena. But the problem with that, too, with Arozarena, he's one of your only right-handed bats, especially when you're only right-handed bats that's worth a shit. If you could find a team that's willing to play J.P. Crawford at second base, that would be interesting. Boy, the sun is really... What is going on here? I can't tell if this is on my screen or... Yeah, we're fun in here, folks. I'm downstairs. Anyways. Oh, God, what a tough way to end this, especially because it's pre-recorded. I was going to do this live, and now we're not even, like, stream of consciousing going crazy. It's just me, like, trying to figure out why my screen looks crazy. I don't know what the Mariners can do besides that. Felton Celestine, not an answer. Leo Rivas has not been that bad this year. He's got a bad reputation, but, like, the stats don't bear out that he's been that horrible. I certainly don't think he's the defensive answer anywhere. I don't know. It's tough. The Mariners have a tough situation ahead of them. Can you find a guy that's a good defensive third baseman? Probably. But not in the organization. Probably. I mean, it kind of makes you wish you had Ben Williamson still hanging around, huh? Playing second base in another Mariners would-be second baseman. Playing second base in Tampa Bay. Yeah, it's bleak. It's bleak for the Mariners, I think, if the guys that they already have just don't start figuring it out. Because if Julio, who has he's having his very best offensive season this early, if he doesn't figure it out defensively, then you got 3 bad outfielders. You have 2 bad infielders, a catcher who can't stay healthy. And then you're like just relying on a rotation and a bullpen that's deep. I will say that. The Mariners pitching staff is still their absolute strength. Because, especially, they don't have 6 major league starters. Cade Anderson is crushing in the minors. They have at least 7 guys who I think are major league ready right now. And depending on how you feel about Ryan Sloan or any of those other guys, or the long guys in the bullpen right now, if they could be major league starters, like the Mariners have depth and options. And maybe that's, I don't know that there's a trade out there that's like Luis Castillo for I was trying to figure out a way to make Trevor Story make sense. Can't do it. Trying to find an option. I've been looking. I'll look for third baseman. I was looking for shortstop. I'll look for third baseman. It is bleak. And also, they haven't staked themselves to... It's not like they stole some wins in, March, April, and early May. They've been scuffling. So, anyway, thank you for listening to this. Thank you for putting up with the pause. And I'm going to go get my daughter and hopefully change a diaper and ever be well-behaved. Thanks for listening. And come see me on July 3rd at Tacoma Comedy Club.